Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Call Me Cordelia, the podcast where we talk about everything under the sun with Anne with an E. I'm Alex.
And I'm Ophelia.
And this week we are doing our 304 rundown, which 304 was definitely a sort of refreshing step from what we had to endure last week. There was still a lot of dark themes in it, I would say. But definitely not as heavy as episode 3 was.
No one died, so I guess we're lucky,
Yeah, honestly, that's where our bar is at now. Like, we don't have to deal with another death, then everything's going great for an episode.
God.
So overall thoughts, like immediate thoughts, I really liked this episode. It was good. I feel like we say that every week now, but this season honestly has just been killing it, and I love it.
You could see that the episode about Mary was like an entity of its own, and now it goes back to what the show is all about and moves the plot forward. And one could say it's kind of a slow pace, but I like it. I like the episode. I like the characters. We have an MVP already, but we'll discuss it later. And with an E is really like bringing it. Like it's already much better than season 2, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with the characters that are involved, because I think that season 2 just came with Anne and Gilbert were really the only like main characters going into season 2, if that makes sense. All the other characters were definitely still there, but I think that Anne and Gilbert were really the only ones that we knew for a fact to expect plot lines from. So season 3 already kind of had that edge on it. And just the development, honestly, season 2, Anne was not my favorite. Because I think she was still kind of immature and had some growing to do. And all of that growing obviously has happened this season. So I think that's probably why I like it so much already. So we're going to do what we always do. We're just going to kind of go chronologically, sort of, although a lot of our notes I think are broken up by character. Which I think actually might make more sense for this episode, seeing as it seems like a very individualized, character-driven episode as opposed to last week, sort of. So we opened this episode with Rachel still trying to set up Miss Stacy.
I love her so much.
Miss Stacy or Rachel?
Both.
Yes. Yes. I do appreciate where I think they're going with it, although I will say I really don't think they're going to, but I will be very disappointed if Miss Stacy like ends the season with someone, or even being implied that she's going to end up with somebody. So I don't know how you Yeah, I don't know how you feel about that, but I would hate that, so I really hope they're not going in that direction.
No, I think it's definitely just meant as like a comedic relief every once in a while in an episode to just show that, like, yeah, Miss Stacy is very much happy being alone. And that's that. And it's just so funny. Like, I'm expecting now to see like 5 guys every episode just lounging around Miss Stacy's home, waiting for her. Like, that would be so fucking funny.
They just keep slowly multiplying. Like every episode, there's like 2 guys, and then the next cutscene, there's like 5.
And they
I think that
all look
would
the
be
fucking
genius.
same. It's so hilarious. They all
Oh
look
my
the same.
god. And honestly, like I had a few asks in my Tumblr, asking about did I think they were maybe going to give Miss Stacy a love interest. And there are a lot of different theories about who they might like among the asks. Someone said maybe like Bash, because they're kind of like, bound by grief. And then someone said, what if Winifred and her end up together? But honestly, I just think it's very important to the story to have Miss Stacy end up alone, because we've talked about this before, but she's just really, I think, supposed to be like a divergent sort of version of Anne, where it's like a version of what Anne could be for this example, I think it's like, you know how Anne is like pretty positive she's going to stay single, which is obviously based on how the girls have been reacting. That was not common during the time, and it was kind of like shocking. So I think having Miss Stacy be the character that we get to see what is it actually like when someone in that time was like choosing to be single, I think that's very important to show.
Yeah, I agree. And Bash and Miss Stacy, I don't think have interacted much or at all. I don't remember if, but it just wouldn't make sense because I've said this so many times now, but this isn't CW, and on Animals and E, they don't get over their loved ones in a snap of a finger, especially if they
Teeth.
died. So I don't think Bash will just forget Mary and marry without two R's, Miss Stacy. Like it just would be very disrespectful, actually. So
Yeah,
um,
no, I think Bash's arc is going to be all about, you know, like the healing and the grieving
yeah,
process this
and
season.
single
So,
fatherhood.
oh my God. Ouchie. Speaking of his fatherhood, Ophelia, Gilbert and Delphine.
I lost it for like 30 seconds, completely disheveled, shriveled up, disintegrated, and I had risen again, and I blacked out. I was like, what the fuck did I just witness? Yeah, that's just basically my thoughts.
Somebody sent me an ask on Tumblr that said Gilbert went from full-time daddy to part-time dad in 0 seconds flat, and I lost my shit. That was so funny. I think it was on Anon, but if you're the one that sent me that, thank you is
We
really all
love
I can
you.
say. Yeah, you just made my week. So thank you very much for
Yeah, I
that
love getting
comment.
anonymous asks because some of you guys are so funny. It just makes my day.
It was hilarious. I laughed at it for a solid 5 minutes, and my one of my IRL friends was like, "What are you laughing at?" And I couldn't show her, obviously, so I just said nothing, and I moved on. Um, Kind of like on the same vein, I guess, as like Gilbert and Delphine. As much as I absolutely love seeing Gilbert kind of have a relationship with Delphine. The grieving process with Bash this episode was about as rough as I expected it to be. It was not fun to watch, obviously, but it seemed it was so well written. As awful as it was to watch, like it was so well written because it was just a very sort of quiet, painful grieving, which felt very authentic to me.
I agree. Yeah, I wrote Bash's representation of grief was spot on. He was emotionless, not willing to cry, at least in the beginning, and not having an appetite. I haven't dealt much with grief, but I do know what it looks like, and it felt very real to me. My heart ached for him. And I love, the part at the end where I think it's a pastor, correct me if I'm wrong, was telling him the story about Mary
Mm-hmm.
as a child, and he just broke down. And it was a way of catharsis for him, but also as the audience to have this final, beautiful memory of Mary. Um, and it was just really nice. I didn't expect a funeral, but it did work. It was like a
Yes.
nice ending of a chapter.
Yeah, and I personally, in my life, I have experienced grief before, and that was like it did again, like you said, it felt very, very accurate. Just you could look at him, and he seemed so weighed down and just
Yeah.
quiet is really the only word I can think of. Like just it felt very authentic, and obviously everybody grieves in very different ways, but from like my personal experience that like kind of echoed it a lot, so I appreciated that. And I'm with you, I didn't expect a funeral this episode. I kind of thought that it was gonna kind of come in like they'd already had it, but it did work. And I think I could be wrong that the pastor in it was reading the same Bible verse or the same section of scripture that he was reading, or the pastor at Gilbert's father's funeral was reading, which it's a
Really?
common, it's a pretty common funeral passage, but that was interesting to me. And the happy memory was great. And also the ending with the kite, I think was
Oh,
so good. Because at the beginning of
gorgeous.
the episode, you had Bash looking at it very sad and detached and like grieving. It was like very much a painful thing for him. You compare that with him at the end, literally flying the kite with Delphine and smiling at it. It just felt like a really good symbol of, healing and moving on. And well, maybe not moving on, maybe that's the wrong word, but healing. And yeah, I just really appreciated that a lot.
What did you think of Elijah? I was really intrigued by him this episode. Because it was just one big emotional mess, you know?
Yes. And it was interesting because I, for a second, was like, holy shit, this guy sucks. Because I thought that he knew his mom was dead and he still, like, wasn't taking the letter. So I was like, holy shit, like, he really is awful. But then when it showed that he had no idea, again, it was everyone deals with grief differently. Like, Bash was, like, really sort of processing, and it was quiet, and then it all came out, but like he'd cried before that. And Elijah tried to sort of push it down. His way of dealing with it was he was like, well, that's that. And then he immediately like turned his back and like took a giant swig of the alcohol he had, and then fought Bash, So I just think that was also like a separate representation of grief and how some people grieve.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then rounding that out where he was like weeping when he was actually reading the letter, was, as much as I don't like Elijah and as much as he has done some awful, awful things, I really, really felt bad for him in that moment, because as awful as he is, he still lost someone he loved, and he lost, his mother, which I thought that was really hard, but it was also like a really, really good scene.
Yeah, I wrote it down too. Like, as morally gray as he was still her son. And it was such, like, the scene of them fighting was so emotional and vulgar and full of desperation. It was just so well done, because I've said this before, but fights are hardly ever out of rage. It's out of like sadness, and it just always hits me every time because it's so saddening.
Oh, interesting. I kind of forgot that Gilbert got into a fight right after his father died.
Yeah.
Also, I totally forgot about that. I think that was definitely intentional.
So I think moving on to a little bit of a more lighter topic. Let's maybe go to Anna Marilla, because they resolved their quarrel, I guess.
Yes, I loved that. I'm glad that it got resolved when it did, because I was going to be concerned if they were going to pull it off, if they, kind of like dragged it on all season. I wasn't going to be stoked about that, but it resolved in, I think, the perfect amount of time. More was timing, honestly, throughout the whole show. The way that she like resolves things is always really spot on, I think.
Yeah, I just liked how relatable Marilla was in these few episodes. Like, it's normal for a mom to be scared for her daughter, and it's logical Marilla hasn't reacted it to it too well because she's still new to this. And Anne isn't the easiest teenager in that time period, I suppose. But what did you think of Matthew putting his foot down and saying, "No, Marilla, you have to listen to me. You have to let Anne figure it out," because I was floored, honestly.
Oh my gosh, Matthew Cuthbert. That's one of the reasons I love him so much, is he's so layered. Like, you have like very quiet, sweet Matthew, who is kind of socially awkward and doesn't really know how to like talk to people sometimes. But when it matters, he is so strong and so insightful too. And especially when he goes back and talks to Marilla and he's like, I know exactly why you're acting the way that you are, and you shouldn't be. Also, when he passed by Miss Lind and she said, "Do you know what's going on in there?" and he said, "Not your business." That sent me. I was like, Matthew Cuthbert. I love him so much. And I think I wrote down, I don't think I've ever heard him speak so many words. Like when he got into that fight with Marilla, it was amazing.
That's when you know it's serious. Like when he talks and he legit talks.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one of the other things also that I had written down in my notes that I appreciated so much about the whole Marilla and Anne thing is the way that they're like fighting has been written. It's like way more mature, like mother daughter teenager fighting, I guess. Speaking of somebody who has been a teenage girl, and also you, which, by the way, if you guys were unaware, Ophelia's birthday is today
Yeah,
as
it's
we're
actually
recording this episode.
it's been 10 minutes since I've aged.
Happy birthday, Ophelia! We're gonna have like a big birthday celebration for you on our CMC Tumblr. And by birthday celebration, I mean we're going to post an episode for your birthday like we're recording right now. I'm
Oh
also
god.
probably going to maybe have a little something something for you, but I'll give that to you later.
Oh my god, don't.
Maybe I will. Moving on back to our notes on Marilla and Anne.
Yes, please. Oh my god, I hate my birthday.
Everyone wish Ophelia a happy birthday. Her Tumblr is at Lydia's dash dash styles. Tell her happy birthday. Thank you very much.
Oh my
Um,
god.
Everyone go tell her happy birthday. So I just said that Marilla and Anne, like their fighting seems way more mature now, like it's aged up. I feel like a lot of their disagreements and headbutting in the previous two seasons, almost all of it came from Anne just being like very melodramatic and rash and headstrong. And this fight felt more like there were definitely two sides to it, and both of them were like making actual points instead of Anne just like having a meltdown, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it reminded me of me and my mom. Like we're
Oh, same.
more so best friends than like mother and daughter. Like we are, but we're also like best friends. And we have these, we have these quarrels and discussions, and it's always very like it's not unintelligent, it's not melodramatic, and they wrote it so well. Like dialogue in N with an E is so strong most of the time. And it definitely reflects in their fights because it's just so interesting to see this dynamic between them shift over the course of the seasons. Um, yeah, and it's an all-time high right now. I really love it. I'm going to be really sad if Anne leaves for Queen's College and she has to leave the Cuthberts behind. Like
Ouch.
I cannot do, yeah. But about Anne, so she found out her parents are dead and she's from Scotland.
Yes, my parents are dead and I'm from Scotland.
Hilarious. Jesus.
Yes, and also I don't know about you, but I kind of like, I mean, I didn't think her parents were going to be alive, so
Yeah.
I yeah, I'm glad. This sounds really bad, but I'm glad that they weren't. I feel like that would have been too
Yeah.
much,
Yeah,
too
same.
unrealistic almost. Um, oh my gosh, speaking of her finding that out, her costume this episode, oh my gosh. She looked amazing. She looked so good.
I just, when you hear her say she thinks she's not pretty and then she's in that getup, like I'm just,
I
I
know.
cannot deal with her
She says
sometimes.
she says she's not pretty, and I'm like, bitch, where? Did you see yourself in episode 4?
You're a classical beauty. You're, ugh.
I love her so much. And we talk about this almost every single episode, but just how much she's grown up, the way how old she looks now, it gets me emotional because we really did watch Amy Beth sort of like grow up right in front of our eyes, and
Definitely.
yeah, the show's definitely playing off of that. So also among the vein of like Anne kind of going off on that little adventure, I feel like we have to talk about everything that happened with Cuquet this episode.
Oh God. Okay.
Yeah.
That's that's a whole other kind of story. Um it's scary how accurate they got with set design and costumes and the behavior of those schools. It felt like I was back at that museum again, like I've said in the previous pod. Um, yeah, it was very scary. Your thoughts, Alexis?
Yeah, it was rough. It was a very, very jarring cut. And I think they did a really good job of changing the scene immediately because she like opens the door and her whole interaction with that nun just felt very uneasy and
Oh,
very
yes.
like just off-putting. Like it felt wrong, and you could tell almost immediately. Like I mean, obviously I knew it was going to be rough because of the history behind it, but it was very, very, ooh, this doesn't feel good right now. um and even more so like the jarringness between that and then Caquette's with her haircut. I think it was a very good production move. I think that they didn't show the actual haircut happening, or they didn't show Caquette like going into the school and kind of realizing that things were wrong. Just cutting immediately and showing how bad it is in the thick of it, I think was way more jarring, is really the only word I can think of for it. And I love, obviously, they're not trying to play it down whatsoever. It was awful, awful, awful. And I'm sure a big part of Canadian history that they wish they didn't have, similar. I feel like every nation to some extent has a part of their history that we can look
Yeah.
back on now and realize, oof, yeah, that was awful. Like that was a terrible, terrible part of history. And I'm glad that Moira didn't try to like play that down at all. Like it was as bad as it was being portrayed in the episode.
Yeah. I think the most horrifying moment for me was when the nun called Coquette Hannah. It's
Oh,
so dehumanizing, and I just recoiled into myself. It,
yeah, it was rough, and I am wondering where they're gonna go with it from here. I mean,
it better
obviously
not
there was
be a
like
white savior story.
no, and I think it's too early to tell. But I think we talked about this in the trailer episode, but I think that it can definitely be avoided and not painted that way. Um, Especially if they bring in Caquette's tribe to kind of, help with it or like talk to them about it, I guess. I
Yeah,
don't know. We'll just have
I
to see how Moira does it.
yeah, I have faith in them, and I think Anne's part in it will be her writing an article about it. I think that'll be the thing that'll be happening. But yeah, I hope it's like an equally saving story, like the tribe and Anne, not just Anne, and
Yeah.
coincidentally also the tribe. Yeah.
Mm.
So, who's your MVP?
Oh my God. Okay. Do you want to say it at the same time? Who is? I
Yeah,
want to know who yours is. All right. On the count of three. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Diana.
Diana.
Oh my God. She stole the episode. She was unbelievable. So good. I don't
I
even know where to start.
I don't know either. I just love how this plotline finally got put into motion because Diana had been so annoyed for these past few episodes, and now she just had enough, and she just did it, and it's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. And the whole quote about because life is short and the world is wide, kind of being a callback to like the way that Anne has influenced her, I think.
Yeah.
The whole like her faking her ankle being hurt was hilarious. Like when she was stumbling away and her with her mom and Jerry like pointed to her ankle really fast and she started limping again.
It was just the thing is, Anne is such an exaggerated character, so it's really nice to have Diana as a character grounded in the society of that time. So for her to take that leap of faith and do that and enter in this household of the Baynards, the Baynard, um, and just and she knows so well how to behave properly that she can extract those qualities and get herself into that family in the best way possible, and it's amazing.
Yeah, so how are you feeling about Diana and Jerry, Ophelia?
I have never been more happy in my now 18 years of living, so that's that. How about
I
you?
I did not. Okay, so I knew I was going to ship them, but I didn't realize it was going to come from my throat so quickly. But I like was watching them and like screaming. Like I was with I've mentioned this, but I watched with two friends and they were both severely reacting to all of the Diana and Jerry moments. Like to the extent maybe a little bit less than Sherbert, but they were still screeching at the top of their lungs. And just like what you said, like Diana just looked so comfortable and happy. And I think that also going along with what you said, that's like an important plot for Diana to have because Anne is just like that. You know, like we're used to seeing Anne go against societal norms and kind of question things, but we've never really directly seen Diana start to do that until this season. And it was just like such a switch that it was so fun to see. Like just the whole thing was just fun. And you can tell that Jerry is like really it's going beyond just kind of like he thinks she's pretty now. It's definitely turning into like a crush for sure.
Yeah, because I don't think, I do think he's like a little embarrassed of his family with the way they have to sleep all together in this one room. They're very loud. They're very touchy-feely, which I can say as someone who's part French and part Belgian, this is very relatable. Obviously, it's exaggerated for TV, but like it's quite accurate. But yeah, I think he really appreciates her, you know, adapting to his life and enjoying it. Yeah, it's really nice.
It was just very sweet. It was a good thing to kind of break up, Bash dealing with grief and then Marilla and Anne
Yeah.
fighting and everything going on with Coquette and I think it was a really good time for it to be in the episode, you know. So, speaking of little on the vein of romance, I guess, the the interaction with Charlie, nice horse, and then he just looks like he wants to punch himself in the throat immediately after he said it. It was so good. I don't know how they're so good at writing these interactions between like teenagers, but that was pretty spot on. I felt like.
Yeah.
Also, Moody just exiting the schoolhouse playing the banjo, amazing.
I think he was trying to serenade to Diana, and he
Oh
realized
god.
midway, like, what the fuck am I doing? And just yeeted out of there.
he they both yoted. Is that the past tense of yeet? Yote. They yote.
It now it now is.
Now it is. They yote out of there. Also, kind of like with crushes and stuff, I guess there was more interaction with Gilbert and Winifred. Miss Rose this episode?
I want to know your thoughts on it so badly because I'm so confused. And also, now they filmed from the inside of the tea room, so I'm so confused. And I just want to know your thoughts on it because I don't have any proper
Well,
ones.
which was interesting that they filmed from the inside, but also I don't think they ever showed them in the shot together. It was like a lot of cutting, and I think actually I could be wrong. I'll have to go back and watch, but I think actually one of the shots was like this wide shot of Gilbert sitting at the table, reaching for his tea. Like you can see the whole table except Winifred is like cut off from the end. Like it just shoots up to her, and it's like Gilbert reaching for his tea, which was kind of an interesting choice. But also, I'm still very much not concerned. There is still just absolutely no chemistry, and it feels still very empty and forced and baseless, I guess. Like, I think Winifred, I know a lot of people are getting, I feel like this is also an important point that we should bring up. A lot of people are being quite nasty about Winifred online, and I don't like that. Because
Yeah.
while Winifred is boring, I mean, it's not like I particularly like her character. If anything, I'm just bored. Like I don't really feel one way or another about her. Um, she's just kind of there, I guess, for me. But I definitely don't hate her. And there's a lot of people saying some pretty nasty things, and I think I don't like that because a lot of the basis, if not all of the basis, for them just having these like feelings of hatred towards her are just because she's a like quote obstacle for Sherbert right now. Which, guys, I am telling you, it is. Do not worry. Like I promise, it's not going to be endgame. It's just I think going to be used mainly as a device this season because even when Gilbert was like talking to her, he was like, "Thank you for your friendship. Like it has been fun." He's talking like very past tense before she says like, "Oh, like you can see me again." And I think a lot of the implications also with their conversation are leading up to what everyone's kind of suspecting with him asking her to the dance. And I really would not be shocked if it's going to be in reaction to Charlie asking Anne potentially
Yeah.
to the dance. So I am still pretty unbothered. I don't know how else to like phrase that, but she bores me, and I think it's on purpose. Like I don't think I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be enthralled with her character or anything.
But she's definitely just like a kind person with no cruel intentions. Like people shouldn't hate on her at all.
Yeah,
Um,
she doesn't even know Anne exists, like, or the whole
yeah.
like relationship or past with Anne and Gilbert. Like, she doesn't know that, so it's not like she's purposefully trying to crush all of the Sherbert fans' dreams or anything like that. It's just I don't think she has any idea. It's also interesting they still have not mentioned how old she is.
What if
So
she's like 30? I'd be God.
I
Okay.
would hate that a lot. Like a lot because they absolutely know what they're doing with her. Like they're supposed to, it's while I keep saying like we're not supposed to ship it, it's definite that doesn't mean it's not being framed as like romantic. So
Yeah.
I would be very weirded out by that.
Oh, and regarding Sherwood, guys, I found this post on Tumblr by Story Girl Katya. She made a great post about it, and she said, I don't understand how people think Anne and Gilbert have taken a step back in their relationship. They are so comfortable in each other's presence. Like it wasn't a big deal to be in the same room together because they do stuff like that now. It's kind of like the scene where Anne was talking to Coquette and Gilbert is just chilling behind them. They are a part of each other's lives now, so they don't have a big Sherbert moment anytime they see each other. Period. So that's a great point, and I think it's even better than a big sherbet moment every single time because, like she said, it means they're comfortable with each other, and that's amazing progress. You
Yeah, the
know?
fact that not every interaction with Sherbert now, like the fact that not every single interaction with Sherbert now is this giant, like, scream worthy moment, I think proves that they're advancing. Like, the stakes are being raised because Anne and Gilbert even being in the same room is not like freak out worthy now. That just like proves that the relationship is progressing pretty rapidly. So that means that in order for them to have like a quote unquote moment now, it has to actually be something really big. So I
Like
think
that
that's.
promo.
Whoa, boy! I was hoping we were gonna get to this soon. I'm so excited.
Wait. Do you have any more notes before we go to the promo or not?
None other than a single bullet point that says "Minnie May, my Lord and Savior." Okay, now the promo. We stand.
I
She
freaked
comes
out.
second for my episode MVP. I'm just kidding. She really doesn't, but I just love her. Uh, so,
Out.
Ophelia, do you
I
want to kind of
really.
summarize what we saw in the promo for those who may not have seen it?
I'm going to try because I'm freaking out on the inside. Um, we saw a lot of things. We saw Ruby being afraid to hold hands with guys, even though she's been obsessed with guys since she came out of the womb. And we saw Anne and Gilbert in front of this heart-shaped mural as if it was straight out of an anime, staring at each other. And it was magical. And now on to you, Alexis, because I will scream and it is past midnight for me. So
Yeah. So also I think kind of the premise, although I have seen people saying I'm not sure if this is going to come next week or the week after when they have like sort of the fair going on because it looks like Anne is going into like a psychic tent maybe. Um
yeah.
and the psychic talks about like you're trying to get a man's attention or something like that. I don't remember exactly what she says. But basically I think my theory, or like a way I could see it going, and I'm just gonna go ahead and get my clown shoes out because I know it's not gonna happen, but I'm just gonna say it anyways. Um, I think that the psychic is probably going to give Anne all these hints about like her future husband, like, oh, he's going to do this, or you'll know when he does this. And I think the episode, or maybe even the rest of the season, is just going to be like peppered with these moments of Gilbert like doing stuff on accident that keeps like lining up with what the psychic said
Oh my
weirdly. And
God.
like Anne is going to start like slowly freaking out more and more and like trying to ignore it. I think that would be hilarious. And I really hope they do that. But do they really love me that much? No.
I
So
think they do. I think they do. It's very
I don't
possible.
know. Either that or maybe she's going to hear all these signs and like get confused and start reading those signs into like Charlie.
Oh
In
no.
reality, like we as the audience are going to see and like kind of force reading in these signs to Charlie, but like, these little subtle things keep happening where like it's actually Gilbert's sort of lining up with the predictions, but only like the audience really can tell. You know what I'm saying? So I think that would be really interesting. We got an anon on Ophelia's Tumblr that someone said, so in that new promo where Anne and Gilbert are standing in front of the mural, I don't know, but anyway, you see a couple walking in the background that kind of looks like an older version of themselves. And I did not see that. However, if I do see that, I'm going to go back and watch it. I'm going to go ahead and shed my skin and I'm going to be attached to my wall. And Ophelia, you can fly down and peel me off next week
So
because
I did see it because I got Dina on. I was like, oh wait, let me see what this is about. She's probably the new he or she is probably delusional. And then I saw it and I couldn't type anything and I just put a reaction meme of I think Kim Kardashian crying.
yes.
And because it could be like it's just a normal couple, but it could be like alluding to them in the future. Because I think the women in the background had like coppery hair.
I definitely feel like if the woman has red hair, then that's exactly what they're intending to do. Yeah, no, if they were not meaning to do that, if it was just going to be a random like extra couple in the background, they definitely would have not made her hair red because that's like Anne's thing, I guess. Not that like no one else can have red hair, but within the context of the show, like that's a very defining quality of Anne. So I just think that was not an accident if the woman does in fact have red hair. So that pretty much wraps up like our notes, but we did get a few questions on Tumblr. I think that we answered some of them already within the episode, just like what we went through. But we had a few more. The first one is from Princess Cordelia Blythe, and she said, "What do you guys think about the possibility of Anne having distant relatives like aunts or cousins?"
Could be in Scotland, but I don't think they'll be relevant. But she might have some correspondence with them, but I don't think it'll be like a big thing.
Yeah, no, I don't either. I don't think it would be like a storyline if that makes sense, but I could see them being like, "Oh, I found out I have a cousin here," or whatever. But that would
Yeah.
be interesting. I just don't know if that would end up being like a main plot of the season. And then Remy LaBubble, Remy LaBub, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm so sorry if I'm not. They said in the last episode of the podcast, you spoke about not really needing Mary's funeral to be shown in episode 4. How do you feel that it actually occurred?
Well, yeah, we said like, it's fine. It was handled well. It was needed. It was like a catharsis, and I think you felt the same way, I guess.
Yeah, I did. I mean, it was good, and it worked. I think mainly because it wasn't like super dragged out or like milked or like hit over our heads. It was just a quiet, like you said, cathartic moment. So yeah, I wasn't mad about it at all. I was going to have issues with it if it was the whole half of this episode was going to be like preparing for Mary's funeral. Because last episode I think was so much about Mary and so much about more celebrating Mary's life and celebrating the people that love Mary rather than mourning, which there definitely was that in this episode, but it wouldn't have felt right, I think, if this episode had a lot of darkness, I guess, like surrounding Mary and all that.
Yeah.
And then the second part of the question was thoughts on Jerry's family.
Love them. My whole family is like them, so that's all.
Basically, I'll sum it up in 4 words. 5 words. We have decided to stand. And that's what I'll say
Yes.
about them. I guess like that's all I can really say. We have decided to stand Jerry's family. We love them.
Period.
Period. End of the story.
So thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast. We're having much fun doing it. So Alexis is at Sherbers with 2 S's on Tumblr, and I'm Lydia's -- styles on Tumblr. And yeah, we'll see you. We'll not see you. I hope you liked it.
Yeah, and as always, if you have any comments or thoughts or questions or theories, you are always, always, always welcome to send them over to our Tumblr. We're just at Call Me Cordelia Podcast, and we love to hear from you guys. So thanks for sending in the questions. Thanks for everyone who already has, and we'll see you guys next week.